Hello, this is Elias, a volunteer reader for Audible Local Ledger, bringing news and information today from the New Bedford Light this Tuesday, June 17th. We begin with an article in the field of education. The headline reads, "Who Wants to Be on the School Committee?" It's reported by Colin Hogan, dateline June 16th. New Bedford Public Schools are the city's largest employer. They take up roughly 2/3 of the city budget, and the district is responsible for multiple $100 million capital projects in long-neglected neighborhoods. And of course, it educates thousands of children every day. The district is a cornerstone of the local economy and government, yet not many people in the community seem interested in holding its reins. New Bedford has not held a competitive school committee election since 2019. Contested preliminary elections are even rarer. Records show none in the last decade. This year, so far, only one of the 3 school committee incumbents up for re-election has indicated she will run, though candidates have until August to file nomination papers with the Election Commission. Melissa Costa, a first-term committee member, confirmed she will enter the contest and has already pulled nomination papers. Colleen Dowicki and Ross Grace Jr., the other members up for re-election, have not pulled papers or confirmed to the Light whether they'll run. As of this publication, 2 fresh-faced challengers have pulled papers for the school committee, indicating an interest to run. In total, these 3 candidates are vying for 3 seats on the committee, setting New Bedford on an early course for another non-competitive election this fall, unless more interest swells. In New Bedford and around the country, school boards offer a ground floor entrance into politics. President Jimmy Carter began his rise through the political ranks with the local school board in Sumter County, Georgia. And in New Bedford, an ambitious and bright UMass Dartmouth student, Joshua Amaral, ran for and won a seat on the school committee in 2013 when he was just 20 years old. He's now the head of New Bedford's Office of Housing and Community Development. Life in politics is difficult, but it's certainly something I'm interested in, Amaral said in a newspaper profile before that race. He would upset a crowded field of 7 contenders, including current school committee member Christopher Cotter and former mayor George Rogers. Today, Amaral is responsible for reimagining and reinvigorating the local housing market through first-time homebuyer programs, vacant property restorations, and attracting new investors and developers. "Being on the school committee was invaluable to me," Amaral said in a recent interview. "If you want to do good in the world, you need to know how interactions with local government work." But without much interest in recent years, this pipeline into public life has been running dry, and the duties of managing the district's increasing expenses has struggled to gain public attention. That's despite a national climate that includes increasingly heated school board contests. While school board races are generally nonpartisan, the politics of such elections have become inescapable, wrote Paru Shah and colleagues in the state Politics and Policy Quarterly in December 2023. Several South Coast towns' most recent round of school board races included talking points from national politics, specifically allegations that school libraries were pushing, quote, ideology, unquote, around race and gender into the curriculum. School librarians and educators fought back, and ultimately most of the candidates looking to remove books from libraries did not prevail. These causes haven't come to New Bedford. Instead, most still describe the school committee elections here as sleepy. Who's running? Newcomers Marcus Coward and Vaughn Marie Moniz have pulled papers to seek election to the New Bedford School Committee. "I'm really trying to inspire young people to get involved in the community," said Coward, a 26-year-old New Bedford activist and college student. Coward said he works 2 jobs and aspires to become a police officer. "There's a lack of political presence in New Bedford when it comes to young representation," Coward said. He hopes to bring new energy to policy decisions around the role of artificial intelligence in the classroom, Coward said. Moniz, 39, the CEO of South Caste Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, an economic development organization, also pulled papers for the school committee. We definitely need to have better representation, she said, referring to Spanish-speaking communities that she said can feel disconnected from local government. Moniz is the mother of 2 children in the district, and she said she hopes to better advocate for them and other children who have special education needs. Costa, the incumbent, is a social worker with the State Department of Mental Health and oversees adult clinical services at a facility in Fall River. Her tenure on the school committee has included advocating for the rights of immigrants and special education students, and she serves on the Finance Subcommittee, which directly oversees the budget. The Light publishes in-depth profiles of all candidates closer to the election. What does the school committee do? The school committee meets once per month throughout the school year and oversees the district's finances, collective bargaining agreements, district policy, community relations, and much more. In reality, this often means the minutiae of paperwork, the disentangling of complicated finances, and the temperament to weather the slings and arrows of public opinion. The job is also unpaid. Some districts in Massachusetts have moved to provide compensation or benefits to their school committee members, including Boston and Medford. Though the question of school committee compensation periodically surfaces around the Commonwealth, the pay isn't generally thought to be the motivation for why people run. Engagement, empowerment, and education are typically why people choose to get involved, said Manuel de Brito, chair of New Bedford's Election Commission. De Brito said running for a seat is a chance for everyday people to make yourself part of the solution, especially on the school committee. Plus, De Brito said, New Bedford city councilors currently receive part-time pay, around $27,000 in 2024 on average, and that hasn't made those races highly contested or popular either. Amaral, the former school committee member, said he decided not to run for re-election when he started a family. I'd have given it more thought if there was support, Amaral said. He added that parents could be encouraged to serve even if a small stipend covered the cost of childcare during the meetings. The Massachusetts Association of School Committees is the statewide body that works to support committee members, and its online handbook has a thorough breakdown of the responsibilities and legal requirements of school committee members. How to run. Anyone interested in running for school committee or another public office can stop by the Election Commission, said De Brito. His office has compiled guides, checklists, and calendars that break down the process for anyone interested. Deadlines for filing nomination papers occur August 19th and September 2nd, and a full calendar explains the cycle's election process. The preliminary election is October 7th, the general election November 4th. But De Brito said that anyone considering running or getting involved should start by attending school committee or other public meetings. Talk to people, De Brito said, like administrators, parents, and even the people on the board who aren't running. These days, De Brito said, many people prefer to scream as loud as they want behind a computer screen, but he encourages everyone to get involved. Elections when the mayor isn't on the ballot, like this year's, may have lower turnout, De Brito said, and that means anything can happen. Whoever's running is what drives turnout, De Brito said. Amaral also supported more people running. People should get involved, he said. Turning to recent community news, an article reported by Crystal Yormick and Eleonora Bianchi. Headline, South Coast residents protest Trump's policy at No Kings rallies. Dateline, June 14th. More than 1,000 protesters gathered in New Bedford and Fairhaven as part of a coordinated national day of demonstrations under the banner No Kings to denounce what organizers describe as the rise of authoritarianism in the U.S. government and to condemn the violent and surreptitious way in which federal agents are detaining immigrants. Hundreds of thousands of people participated in approximately 2,000 No King rallies throughout the United States, with demonstrations held in every state, including more than 100 in Massachusetts. Demonstrators in countries such as Germany, France, the United Kingdom, Canada, Mexico, and others flooded the streets of major cities in pro-democracy rallies. The No Kings rallies were scheduled on June 14th, the same day as President Donald Trump's birthday, the 250th anniversary of the United States Army, and Flag Day. Trump organized a military parade with tanks, planes, and more than 6,000 soldiers in Washington, D.C. to mark the Army's anniversary. The military parade is estimated to cost between $25 and $45 million. Trump, earlier in the week, warned that protesters in Washington would face consequences. If there's any protesters that wants to come out, they will be met with very big force, Trump told reporters in the Oval Office on Tuesday. I haven't even heard about a protest, but you know this is people that hate our country, but they will be met with very heavy force. The protest in New Bedford began at 11 a.m. at Hazelwood Park, where protesters gathered along West Rodney French Boulevard. Organized by the local activist group Democracy Unleashed, it drew a crowd of roughly 350 people holding signs that read, "No Kings since 1776, Hate will not make us great, and liberty and justice for all." Erin Patterson, co-creator of the Democracy Unleashed Facebook page, said she hopes the protests will spark awareness and the need for community. "We all know what's happening here," Patterson said. "People just need to open their eyes, and enough of us need to be together and fight this." An hour later in Fairhaven, a crowd of about 1,000 demonstrators lined up outside the high school. That protest was organized by the Fairhaven Democratic Town Committee, Democratic Party chairs from Rochester and Mattapoisett, Indivisible South Coast, and the 5501 movement, an activist network whose name stands for 50 Protests, 50 States, 1 Day. Ann Richard, chair of the Fairhaven Democratic Town Committee, said protesters in small towns are just as important as protests in larger cities like Boston or New York City. "We're just saying that we have power too," Richard said. "It's really important that people know where we are all across the country and across the world." Nancy Becker, a volunteer with the Mass 5051 movement, said Mass 5051 is hoping to persuade 3.5%, or 12 million Americans, to take to the streets. According to a study at Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government, protests are twice as likely to succeed as armed conflicts, and those engaging a threshold of 3.5% of the population have never failed to bring about change. Americans are now getting off their couch and saying, "Enough is enough," Becker said. The events in New Bedford and Fairhaven were peaceful, with people chanting, cheering, and sign-waving along major intersections. In Fairhaven, Trump supporters drove by, yelling and using vulgar hand motions. Protesters attached their signs to oars and brooms to hold them up. At Hazelwood Park in New Bedford, several demonstrators criticized Trump's approach on immigration, calling attention to mass deportations and what they described as racial profiling. "We don't want our neighbors scooped up off the streets," Patterson said. "We haven't heard of any real criminals being arrested yet. The military shouldn't be used against us." Alicia Lopez Gonzalez, co-director of Mujeres Victoriosas in New Bedford, a women empowerment organization, said she hopes voices from the protests are heard nationally and everywhere else. "We're here and we love this country," Gonzalez said. "We love it because it's supposed to be freedom, and we don't have freedom anymore." Two protesters in New Bedford also handed out pamphlets titled 8 Things You Can Do to Stop ICE and Little Ways to Resist, Mutual Aid and Community Care. Other protesters in New Bedford said they were in support of the LGBTQ+ community, women's rights, and free speech. Nick Olenzicki said he was motivated to protest because of a lack of due process, crackdowns on free speech, threats to journalists, and people showing up without uniforms for extrajudicial actions. "It's time to get out and speak up before we can't speak up anymore," Olenzicki said. South Coast protesters emphasized the importance of protecting democracy and increasing solidarity between fellow citizens who share their sentiments. "I'm really hoping to get Donald Trump's attention," Olenzicki said. I'm hoping to get other people's attention, my fellow citizens of the United States. Ben Martinez, a retired teacher, said he hopes to gather strength and courage from one another. Martinez said he hopes to encourage more local residents to join future protests. This is the cradle of opposition to Kings. This is Massachusetts, he said. In Boston, No Kings protesters joined tens of thousands of people on the streets for the city's annual Pride Parade, which had already been scheduled. Because marching in the Pride Parade is not available to the public, protesters for No Kings instead lined up along the parade route. Fall River's protests took place from noon to 2 p.m. at the intersection of William S. Canning Boulevard and Newton Street. Saturday's No Kings protests in the South Coast were not the first big demonstrations in the region this year. In April, dozens of residents boarded the early commuter train from New Bedford to Boston Common, while hundreds more gathered near the Dartmouth Mall, part of the nationwide hands-off mobilization targeting Trump-era policies. Weeks later, about 400 people gathered in Fairhaven, steps from the high school, to protest what they called the slow dismantling of American democracy. Elsewhere in this edition of the New Bedford Light, an article about the environment. The headline reads, Buzzards Bay Coalition makes its largest ever purchase of property. It was reported by Crystal Yormick. The dateline was June 13th. The Buzzards Bay Coalition has announced the acquisition of 1,652 acres of land from the Slocum Gibbs Cranberry Company for $9.5 million, the largest ever purchase in the coalition's history. The land will be permanently protected as open space and will officially open to the public in the spring of 2027. The vision of the coalition is to make these lands, these natural landscapes, accessible wherever possible, said Scott LaJoie, communications director. The newly purchased land extends through areas of Carver, Wareham, Rochester, and Middleborough. It includes vast forested uplands, cranberry bogs, and floodplain wetlands, along two bordering areas of the Wewiantic and Sippacan rivers. These natural habitats do a lot of work naturally to keep pollution out of the rivers that lead into the bay, said Brendan Annett, Vice President of Watershed Protection for the Coalition. The purchase includes multiple acres of existing cranberry bogs. The Coalition plans for 165 of these bogs to be retired and ecologically restored to their original state as wetlands. Another 35-plus acres of viable cranberry bogs will be used to continue agricultural operations where feasible, according to a press release. The highest producing and environmentally friendly bogs will continue to be harvested, maintaining the heritage of farming on this land, according to the coalition. The remaining acreage is already natural landscape, Annette said. John Gary Garrettson III, owner of the Slocum Gibbs Cranberry Company in Carver and third-generation operator of the farm, sold the land to the coalition. Garrettson and his family decided conservation should be the company's next step. They made this decision in the face of huge pressure to convert the land to residential development or sand and gravel mining or clear-cutting for solar arrays, Mark Rasmussen, president of the Buzzards Bay Coalition, said in the release. The purchase between Garrettson and the coalition has been in the works since April of 2024, said Annette. Garrettson received the Buzzards Bay Guardian Award, the organization's highest honor, for conserving the land and for his role in the purchase. Annette described Garrettson's legacy of conservation as a model. We're going to continue to do this type of thing and continue to work with willing landowners who are looking for options for selling their land when it's time to do that, Annette said. We want to be an alternative option to development. The coalition partnered with the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Buzzards Bay National Estuary Program, and the towns of Carver and Wareham for the purchase. Funding sources included the federal and state governments, local community preservation funds, and private donations. Because of the purchase, the land will now be permanently protected by conservation restrictions, upheld by partner organizations including the Wareham and Carver Conservation Commissions, Rochester Land Trust, and the Massachusetts Department of Fish and Game, according to the release. So while we own the property, we've coordinated for other entities to permanently protect the conservation values of the property, Annette said. Annette said this process is not unique to the newly purchased property, and the coalition enters into these conservation restriction agreements for all of its projects. The coalition will begin a planning and assessment process at its next step. This includes evaluating how to conduct ecological restoration on the retired bogs and how to use the land publicly. Current plans include opening up trailheads on the property. The coalition, an organization devoted to restoring and protecting Buzzards Bay, seeks to purchase land that improves the watershed and helps to conserve land from development. It recently finished restoration of former cranberry bogs for its new Mattapoisett Nature Preserve, named The Bogs, as previously reported by The Light in December 2024. We turn now to education news. An article reported by Colin Hogan, dateline June 12th. The headline reads, New Bedford High and all 3 middle schools to go phone-free. New Bedford High and all 3 of the city's middle schools will be phone-free starting in the fall, the district announced in an email to parents on Thursday. A letter from Superintendent Andrew O'Leary said that the district will use Yonder pouches, the rubber-like bags that lock students' phones away, to prevent phone use during the school day for almost 6,000 middle and high schoolers. Students will maintain possession of their Yonder pouches and phones throughout the school day and will not be able to use their phones until their pouches are opened at the end of the school day, O'Leary said. In an effort to best serve your child, we appreciate your full support in adoption of the Yonder program at our schools, O'Leary concluded in his letter. The announcement hit parents' inboxes just a few hours before Thursday evening's commencement ceremony, when graduating seniors would pose for selfies and celebrate their achievements with phone and video calls to family and friends. These outgoing students will be the last in New Bedford to have ready access to cell phones during the school day, representing a changing tide with mixed public reaction. Around the world, more than 60 countries have implemented total or partial bans on smartphones in the classroom, including South Korea, Finland, the United Kingdom, and Brazil, according to World Education Blog. Some research suggests that cell phone and social media use can undermine academic outcomes, but other studies say that more evidence is needed. A majority of United States have also now banned or regulate cell phones in schools, owing to swift legislative action since 2023, according to reporting from PBS. In Massachusetts, Governor Maura Healey told reporters this May, I think we need to rein in the use of cell phones during the school day. And while some legislators agreed with Healey's stance, there has been no statewide action yet in the Commonwealth. Individual school districts in Massachusetts, including Holyoke, Salem, and now New Bedford, are among those who have implemented phone bans. In New Bedford, the incoming student council president, Mark Dressel, said, the impending phone ban using Yonder pouches definitely has its pros and cons. Dressel continued, it's a good thing that the district is attempting to address the issue of social media, but an outright ban is not the way to go. Last year, the district scaled back plans for a high school phone ban after students opposed its plan, the Light reported then. Instead, each middle school pursued a trial this past year, such as stricter enforcement of existing policies or phone lockers in the classroom, cubbies where students deposited their devices. Elliot Talley, then student council president, told The Light last year that New Bedford students were disproportionately likely to support their families with a job or take care of their siblings, things they would need access to their phone to do. Just hours before he walked the graduation stage Thursday, Talley reiterated those points. New Bedford is a district where a lot of our students are taking care of their siblings or even their own children. They need to be in contact with their families, Talley said, or they're working to take care of their families. Still, Talley said, his position has softened because he's become aware of just how many students are using their phones during the school day. Superintendent O'Leary said the district will be open to potential carve-outs after considering student feedback, including for those who may need their phone for medically necessary reasons. O'Leary said that parents also provided some feedback, which building-level administrators heard at back-to-school nights. He said that some parents have concerns about safety, but O'Leary said that parents can still access their children by calling the school's main office. None of the involved principals or the local teachers' union immediately responded to a request for comment on Thursday. Families can attend an information presentation on Wednesday, June 18th in Keith Middle School's community room on the north side of the building to learn more about the new cell phone policy. In Community Voices, we now hear an opinion piece by Rick Posniak. Opinion: Actions of ICE Agents Damage Public Trust. He writes, the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, agency is facing a significant image and reputation crisis, largely due to viral citizen-recorded videos and news reports capturing aggressive enforcement tactics and verbal threats against citizen bystanders. One recent incident that garnered national media attention took place in New Bedford, involving an ICE agent using a hammer to break the window of a car, believing the occupant was an undocumented immigrant, which he was not. In East Boston, a man was videoed being knocked to the ground by agents as he watched them make an arrest. Other bystanders have been verbally attacked for videotaping arrests and asking agents who they work for. The militarized nature of ICE agents, marked by military-style combat vests, face masks, and their use of aggressive physical force, has drawn sharp criticism from local and state officials, immigrant rights groups, legal experts, and the public. They see such actions as excessive and unnecessarily violent. These actions undermine the public trust of ICE, and in the court of public opinion, once a law enforcement agency loses this trust, they are in an image and reputation crisis. It's important to acknowledge that ICE and its agents play a critical role in helping maintain national security and public safety by enforcing immigration laws, combating illegal immigration, and preventing cross-border crime like human trafficking and drug smuggling. However, circulation of these videos on social media and their subsequent amplification by local and national news outlets have further intensified the perception of a group of undisciplined and poorly trained agents operating with impunity. This reputation crisis has profound implications not just for ICE's public image, but also for its operational effectiveness, trust, and respect. This opinion piece was authored by Massachusetts resident Rick Posniak, who spent decades as a public relations and crisis communications leader, where he prevented and resolved high-profile image and reputation crises. That's all we have time for from this edition of New Bedford Light. Thank you for listening.